I thought maybe 2 or 3 of you, might be interested in this old computer and some boring history associated with it, and myself. So anyway, yeah, that's an old Macintosh. That's it's not really my first computer. I started with an Apple IIe in just '81, and I was in the corporate world, believe it or not, goofball like me. And I had territory and areas I was keeping up with, and I studied enough to see that a computer could help me, and I wasn't afraid to jump in. So I got an Apple IIe and managed numbers and learned to use a basic spreadsheet. What was it, VisiCalc at the time? And then of course Mac and Apple came out with some things that were easier to use. But what was it? Well, Excel. Yeah, the first one I actually spent some big dollars for was, I think it was the earliest version. I'm thinking Excel, perhaps. Yeah, really, which we use today with Office, right? So anyway, this is a Mac, but this is the one I bought in '84. So I graduated from the Apple II series to a Mac in '84. And this is the first Mac. That's one reason I thought maybe you'd find it interesting. This was the first Macintosh, and I was kind of early with it. This thing came out, and I think it was introduced in January by Steve Jobs of '84. And then I bought this. I was in the publishing world I was in. I was at that point involved with software with this kind of upstart division of this company, publishing company. It was in educational publishing, and at that time it was really it was new stuff. Anything to do with a computer, anybody knew anything about a computer at all, they thought you were a genius. That's what was funny. But some of you remember those days. People didn't even know how to use word processing. Didn't know what word processing was, a lot of people still, and everything. So if you could actually turn a computer on and get it to do something in the early '80s, he was like, whoa, that guy's smart. So I got the advantage of falling into that. It was kind of funny. But I really got into it as a tool, just like this thing, it's a tool. It's a lot of fun too. And these are tools, and they're a lot of fun. This one's not anymore. But so anyway, it was an exciting time. I mean, I really can't relate to you if you didn't live through it, and even if you did live through those times, if you were not involved in it at all, if it just sort of was going on off your radar. But if I just happened to be, a lot of it was coincidence, and within the publishing world I was in, I just kind of same old dumb me made it wasn't really a mistake, it was a good move. I said, yeah, I'll jump into the computer division, because I had bought one and was using it. And most people, I mean, by far most people had not their own personal computer. So I knew a little bit about how to use it, a little bit of spreadsheet, word processing, that kind of thing, things you needed to know. And so, yeah, I'll do it. So there were just a few of us, a handful, and it was really exciting times. There wasn't much software out there at the time. All that was going on. It was really interesting. If you Google those times, the headlines, the articles about the new computers and everything and software programs, it's almost funny to read now. But anyway, so the big buzz was about the Macintosh and, of course, Apple. And this company I was with, we attended SoftCon, which was a huge annual software. You imagine that, actually having a big meeting like the SHOT Show or something, or the NRA convention for software. And I don't think it lasted all that long, just a few years, but I went, I guess, 2 different years. The year we went in New Orleans in February of '84, I looked it up, because I wasn't sure. I knew it was '84, I couldn't remember the month or anything, but I looked it up, and it was in '84, February. And I remember they had one of these things Apple did in their display, and these kinds of conventions, many of you have been at. If you've not, when I say booth, it's not really a booth. The booth is as big as my house, and they had a Macintosh in there as big as a small house, almost. It was a huge, about a 2-story Mac replica, and hundreds of Macs, and they had rooms of Macs. You'd go in and use them, and so that was a pretty cool time. And and the thing that's hard to imagine too, if you're a younger person, is this was really the first time that I'm aware of. This was the first time, of course, you had a mouse. That was it. And it was the first time what attracted me to it was the writing was black on white. It's like we like to write, it's black on white paper. Well, that's what the screen was. Up until this, it was that you see it in some of the old movies, the green on a black background, or white on a black background if you're talking IBM, and the Mac Apple II was green on a kind of a blackish background. And if you're wondering why it's not on, it doesn't work. Okay, by the way, and so this was actually like you look at a page, a regular page, generally speaking, but more importantly, you could change font size, you could draw, you could paint. This was the first time all of this was available, at least to the general public that I'm aware of. Mac Paint. I still have the original disc here, Mac Write, Mac Paint. Now this thing's been in a barn, in the basement, and everything for the last couple of decades for the most part, but I still have the manual for Mac Paint, for Mac Write. That was the word processing program, and that's the manual for the computer. Okay, and I'm not trying to sell this because it's not for sale, but it doesn't work anyway. The power supply went out several years back. So there's the manual, if anybody's interested in learning how, and here's an old copy I found of Macworld. That's 88, May of 88, still in the wrapper. So I used to buy Macworld and try to keep up with it, because again, I was kind of in that business for a few years, and I was never a computer nerd. I was never a programmer or anything like that. I just liked firearms, like a Glock. They were tools. They were tools, and still are. I've always used them just as a tool. They're wonderful tools. So anyway. I came home from SoftCon in '84, and I started shopping for a computer, for a new one, for a Mac, and I'd had a nice bonus that year from being such a great employee and being so successful. And I think that was the year I bought. Now, 1 year I had had mostly pretty good years every year I was doing that, but with one bonus I bought a computer and an Uzi. And that may have been the year. I don't know. It was either that or I think it was when I bought the Mac. I bought a Mac and an Uzi that year, I think. Either that or when I bought the first Apple. I lost track of it now. But actually, I think it was this, because it was '84, I think, when I bought the Uzi. So anyway, still have the Mac, but not the Uzi, right? But it was expensive. It was, I think, $2,500, about that for the computer. And I think that included this extra disk drive. I don't remember if I had to pay extra for that or not. I think I bought a printer at the time. I remember paying around $3,000, $3,200, something like that, which at the time was a lot. And that's probably what, $6,000 now or something. It was a lot, especially when you consider what this thing would do. All it would do was basically, when it came out, there was very little software for it. Mac Write, Mac Paint was it. And then of course, lots of things were in development. And the biggest problem was it was so slow. Now here's something you can't relate to. I'm not going to put it in because it won't eject it, but if I put that in there, that's how you would start this thing up. 128K, wow, of RAM. And it had no hard drive in it, see? There's no hard drive. So this was it. The program was on here, and then you'd punch it in there, and then go get you a cup of coffee, read the newspaper, and in about 2 or 3 minutes it would finally be booted up. And you could start writing or painting. Now, I don't know if I bought that or if that came with it, or I bought it at the same time, but if you had the extra drive, it was nice because you could put a blank disk in there, and you could, what you're writing, you could save to that. And that worked out pretty well. But it was slow to save, slow, everything about it was slow. But, I mean, it would drive you crazy. If this thing did work, and someone gave you one to work with, you would, yeah, it's like a Model T Ford. And it really is kind of the Model T Ford of the computer world. So a few years later, I bought a hard drive. I did some research and I saw what other people were doing. I realized they were making a hard drive for it. It was external and it would sit on it. It was about as big a footprint as the manual, and you could just set the computer on top of it. It's bigger than this, but about that thick, and it was, what was that thing, 10 megs, John? Yeah, 10 meg hard drive. That was what was funny. And 10 megs, and I paid $1,000 for it. It was an Apple hard drive, 10 megs. I mean, what's your phone got on it right now? You can buy flash drives, with what, 62 gigs, But it was a big investment. But it made this thing run faster. It booted up a lot faster because the programs were actually on that hard drive. Imagine that. And so when you turned it on, it wasn't long before it was up and going. So then it became a pretty productive machine. It really did. And it was pretty cool. And I bought a printer with it and everything, the tractor feed and all that. And that's what I used. I ran spreadsheets and when I was in the corporate world, every memo I wrote was on here. That's back in the days before email really got going. I mean, there was some forms of that, but not much. And I was on CompuServe, but there wasn't much out there until AOL came along and a few others. There was no internet really that we were using. That came along in the 90s, okay, when people started using the internet. And then when I came back to education, I still had this thing, and I'd been intensely involved in this stuff, going to conventions and meetings and everything, and helping with the development in the field I was in. And I got back to education in 1990, and we had a couple of computer labs, nice computer labs, but it was kind of frustrating because we'd start writing something, and I can remember a kid, Zan. I remember him coming to me one day and say, Mr. Higginbotham, we were starting an essay or something. He said, can I start this at home on my computer? Because he probably at that time, I don't know what the percentages was. We used to do surveys and keep up with it, but most people didn't have a computer in the house, even in 1990, 91. The student, Zan, he came up, we were starting an essay, and he comes up, and it's really funny because Mr. Hickok, is it okay if I start this at home on my computer? And I said, well, no, we want to get started now on our first draft, so I can help you with some different things, And I felt his pain because for the last 10 years, everything I had written was on a computer. And well, even before that, on a typewriter, because that's what drew me to computers originally. Because my mother made me take typing in high school. I don't know why. She wanted me to be a good secretary, I guess, one day. At that time, that's before computers were in anybody's imagination, microcomputers. So I took it, and I remember that class well. I actually enjoyed it. Oh man, there were some hot gals in that class sitting right there at my table. So I enjoyed the class, and I learned to type. And like I said, I typed about 100 words a minute, and it was something that I don't know, I picked up with it and liked it. So that drew me to the computer. I remember being in Radio Shack one day, and I'll get back to where I was, thinking, how do these things work? This was in like 1980 or 79 or something, and they had those, TRS-80s or something, and I said, and I saw it appear on the screen while I was typing, so I can type on that screen and backspace and change my words or whatever I type on there, I can print out. I remember asking the guy that, and I know that sounds really stupid now, but at that time it wasn't. And he said, yeah, and he showed me. And okay, that's launched me into looking for a computer, all right? So anyway, and I guess I was still teaching at that time, so my first incarnation as a teacher. All right, so back to Zan. So Zan comes up, and I could feel his pain because I got to where I didn't want to write things until I got to my computer. If I had a memo to write, just anything that involved more than 3 words, I didn't want to get a yellow pad out and write all these pages because I could type it and edit and then print, just like we all do now for the most part. And so anyway, in that environment, so I got to taking them to the lab as much as I could, but it was just, it's awkward. You couldn't do it with every class, and there'd be conflicts and all this sort of thing. And so unfortunately, we had a headmaster where I was teaching that was really really open to technology. He wanted to do something dramatic. Laptops were showing up at that time, 1990, 91, 90. This was actually 92, 93. And so I said, hey, I'm your guy, let's do it. I'll be the guinea pig, and we did. And so for the last 20 years I taught, 93 on up, every one of my students had a laptop computer. All right, so that's just how we write. It's how we think, isn't it? So long story short on that, I've been involved in these stupid things for so long. In those early days, I was really on the bleeding edge. It was a pain. I found myself lap linking computers that had problems with them. The kids, 50 or 60 of them, and trying to keep them going. And it was with help from IBM people. It was colossal endeavor, put it that way. It's gotten a lot better now. The later years were almost trouble-free. We had a nice computer department that took care of all that, and it evolved into something that was really cool. But let me back up. So, yeah, and again, I've been intensely involved in the computer, and you probably wouldn't even suspect that. Because again, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a computer nerd really. It's just that I found them very interesting tools from early on, and have always just been involved with them, and found myself, because of that involvement, teaching other people how to use them early on. And we have new programs where I taught, and I'd be involved in the training and just different things. And it wasn't that I was a genius, it's just I knew a little bit more than other people, which doesn't take much, with a computer, and especially in those days. But let's back up to shopping for your first computer back in the early 80s. You might be interested, I meant to mention that, what that was like, because that's something that a lot of people, even that are my age, can't relate to probably, because they were not shopping for a first computer. Like I said, I was a little different. The computer shop on that bag over there, that's where I bought, I believe that's where I bought my Apple II, my Apple IIe, and where I bought my Macintosh. That was a computer shop in Nashville, and it had just 2 or maybe 3 locations. I think it had 2 originally, well, probably 1 originally. But computer shops back then, it was not like going to Best Buy, of course, buying online. There was no online. And they were boutiques. They were really upscale places, especially if you're looking for an Apple or an IBM PC when they came out in those early days of the early 80s, mid 80s. You'd go in there and it'd be a night. In fact, I bought, I guess I bought the Mac. I don't remember. There was one downtown in a really nice place, downtown Nashville, St. Cloud's Corner, I believe I want to say. There was one in Green Hills, which, if you're familiar with Nashville at all, is a really nice area of Nashville. And there was a computer shop there. So once I decided I was going to buy an Apple, there were just a few places to find one like that, and they were really nice places. You'd go in and there'd be like 1 or 2 people working there, and there might just be 1 or 2 customers, because not everybody was looking for computers. And they would take time and explain to you how they worked and how you hook up this printer, and how, it's just a totally different world. I was telling John, I couldn't really think of a good analogy for you, what it was like. A really good cigar shop is one thing that comes to mind. Think about the city or the town where you live. There's probably maybe a nice cigar shop where you go buy hand-rolled cigars, and there's a humidor, and there's probably just 1 or 2 or 3 maybe in your town, or just 1 if you're in a smaller town or something. So it's kind of like that. I got to find the cigar shop. If I was in Charlotte, North Carolina or somewhere this afternoon, I was looking for a cigar shop, I could look and there'd be a couple, I'm sure. Or Bowling Green, Kentucky, there's probably 1 or 2, I don't know. But it was that same way. If I was looking for an Apple computer, it would be a boutique, a small shop, really nice shop, very educated people. Not like going to, I don't smash Best Buy or those kinds of places, but you walk in, there's somebody in there that just started yesterday, don't know anything about the computers, but you got a big lineup of them and 40 different kinds. It's just a different world now. So it was kind of an interesting time, and I've gone too long, but I wanted to show you this baby, and because this is it. This is the one I bought. It's not one like it. It's the one I bought in '84. Came back from SoftCon all excited. I tried it there, and decided I would take the plunge. Very slow, but it was pretty cool. And then of course that led to a string of computers since then. I used it in my classroom when I came back to teaching for years. There was programs you could use with grading and different things. And I'd roll. I remember I had this on a roller table. I'd roll into the closet and lock it up at night. And it was so funny because soon after that it became worth nothing essentially. And now it's worth a little bit as a collector's piece. But there for years and years it was worth nothing. It was in the barn, but I would lock it up. And one thing I was going to tell you too, I brought it out. Stephen Jobs died, a couple years ago. And when I saw that on the news, it put me on a hunt, and that's probably him calling right now. Yeah, Stephen, you up there? Yeah, no problem. Yeah, okay, thanks. He appreciated the fact that I brought this thing out and that I'm displaying it, for YouTube. So anyway, but anyway, when he passed, I saw that in the news, and I cut out the article and his picture, and I thought, well, you know, my students might be interested in this. You know, they're just middle school. And so I went to the barn and dug this thing out of the loft, wiped it off a little bit, and I took it to my classroom the next morning, and I set it on a table, set up just like this, in kind of the back of the room there. I had a really nice big classroom, high-tech classroom, and set it up there, and it was really interesting to me that 13-year-olds, they started messing with this thing, and they were fascinated by it. And to me, it didn't seem like it was all that long ago, but to them, it really is like I don't know, an artifact from the Dark Ages, I guess, but it didn't seem to me it had been that long, because I'd been using it right there, you know, like, what, 15 years before that to run grades and everything else. But the kids, I'd find them back there all the time, it wouldn't even work. And they'd be messing with this mouse, that they found that fascinating, and this keyboard. They'd be back there typing on the keyboard all the time and just looking it over. And so that was interesting to me, and you know, more time had passed than I realized, I guess, and it looks different than, it doesn't look all that different to me because I used it for so many years, but they were just fascinated by it. And again, this was the first one, and it was a 128K of memory. That's RAM, random access memory, but I upgraded it, you know, in the back. I got a 512. I took it in and upgraded that baby to 512K, so it was a screaming machine, as you can imagine. My phone that Stephen just called me on, in fact, has what, about 1 million times, you know, the capability and memory is that old Macintosh. So anyway, I've rambled too long, but that's one advantage of having the other channel. I can ramble even more if I want to, and so can John. And you know, this Mac, one reason we brought it out, just to be silly, but also this Glock, you know, Glocks came around about the same time as that Macintosh, and it's kind of interesting, the difference, isn't it? This thing is not much use today. That thing is, isn't it? Anyway, that's your lesson on Macintosh 128Ks, in case you're ever in the market for one. Life is good.